Well, to keep things flowing, we'll go ahead and open the meeting here. SEDA COG MPO meeting. May have a few people joining us online yet, or through telephone, and maybe another one or two in person here. But we're glad to have everyone in the room and joining us online. So we'd like to go ahead and call to order the August 12th SEDA COG MPO meeting. Catherine and Kay, thank you for your support with running the audio visual and keeping our group all connected. We are recording the meeting. Following today, we'll make sure that's uploaded to SEDA COG's YouTube channel, and any of you can access that in the future. Anyone from the public can go ahead and listen and take in the events at their leisure. Glad to continue to offer that capability. We'll do a little bit of round of introductions here. We'll do the room first, and then I think we can see all the participant panel. We'll expand that after we do the in-person introduction here in the room. If anybody has questions, or if you're a new participant, you can let us know. But before we kick off the introductions, I'll mention we're pleased to announce that Kristen McLaughlin is joining us today. I know we previously shared an email that in July she was joining our transportation team, and we're ecstatic to have her on board. She brings a ton of experience. I know several of you have worked with her and maybe some of her prior roles in community development with block grants, or maybe at the City of Sunbury, or at PennDOT or Union County. So she brings a lot of breadth of experience and the resources to our group. And we're glad to have Kristen join us here today for her first MPO meeting. And Frank Hampton, I think, has joined us online. Just announced that there, Kerry Mullins, has been engaged with the MPO for a long time, our liaison program center, and done a lot of tremendous work for us. He's the vice chair, of the MPO. So we'll see how we need to address maybe that office position. But Kerry is on a temporary assignment at PennDOT District 8, kind of the Harrisburg, Lancaster, York County region, South Central PA. So he's the planning and programming manager on an acting level right now. So we'll see after December what happens there, but Kerry's on that assignment, and we're glad to have Frank support us. He's familiar with our area. He was our liaison several years back when we had some turnover at the program center. So we welcome Frank to the MPO process as well. So with that, I'm Steve Herman, and all of you in the room know me. For those online, the Transportation Program Director here at SEDA COG. And so I want to welcome you to today's event. And we'll go ahead and go around this way with Catherine next for introduction.
Sounds good. I'm Catherine Wild, also with SEDA COG in the Transportation Department.
I'm Kay Ike. I'm also at SEDA COG Transportation Department.
Brad Kerstetter, Juniata County Planning. Greg Moulter, Montour County Planning.
Katie De Silva, Clinton County Planning.
Michelle Bremer with Gannett Fleming.
John Ray, PennDOT District 3 in Wisconsin. Mark Calusi, Mifflin County.
How are you?
Yeah.
But say anything you want.
Kristen McLaughlin with SEDA COG.
Thanks, Kristen. And I think we can see the participant panel there. Is there anybody that's is your first MPO meeting, or I think we had someone from Luzerne County, Jonathan Shaw, is a new staff person there. So we welcome him to being involved. He might be joining with Chris Chapman. As you know, our urbanized area spills over into Luzerne County. We coordinate, with Luzerne County staff on a number of things, and we're glad to have them involved as well. So, Jonathan, are you with Chris today?
Yes, I am. I'm taking it in Chris's office.
Great. We welcome you. Thank you.
Morning.
Great.
We have one phone number that I don't have documented. 717-787-3245. Could you just let us know who you are?
Frank.
Sounds like a central office.
3245, phone number ending in that. Are you able to unmute?
Maybe that's audio issues. I can confirm that in my contacts, see if that is Frank Hampton. Yeah, definitely a Harrisburg area, probably participant. Thank you, Catherine. With the introductions and the calling to order of the meeting, we'll go ahead and move right along on the agenda. We do have two sets of minutes in your packet. We have those broken out separately as items C and D. The reason we're putting C in, again, the April 8th MPO meeting minutes, is on page 7 of the packet. you'll see we have some more explanation about what had occurred when, at that portion of the meeting, Carrie Mullins had been chairing the meeting because of Jim Saylor's departure. And then a motion was made to install yours truly as the chair of the SEDA COG MPO. And we didn't kind of have that introduction or a fuller explanation of that in the minutes that were put before the group back in June when we adopted those minutes. We just wanted to put them back out, see if there was any questions. And since there was a slight revision there to give more context for how that transpired with the vote and the seating of me as the chair and the signatory authority for the MPO processes, we wanted to put that back out there for approval since there was a change made after the initial adoption. So any questions about the April 8th MPO meeting minutes?
Steve, I'll make a motion to approve.
Great, thank you, Mark, for the motion. Do we have a second? Second by Greg Moulter. Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. The next set of minutes is from our June 10th meeting. That's agenda item D. Begins on page 10 of your packet. So we would entertain if there's any questions, comment about those before a motion to approve.
Steve, I'll also make a motion to approve this minute.
Thank you, Mark. Lucy for the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Katie, for the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. Next, we'll be digging into agenda item E, and that's our normal TIP administrative modifications and amendments. We do have two amendments this time, one in District 2, one in District 3. And so on page 16 of your packet begins the first amendment, and that's in District 2 for some high friction surface treatments. Seeing a lot of positive benefits from these HFSTs or high friction surface treatments, especially on curves and on some of the high-speed routes and arterials in the region. So there's some installations that are going to be occurring on Interstate 80 and State Route 74. So we'll turn this over to Mr. Schultz, if you don't mind, give us a little bit more description of that.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. I want to first mention that we are welcoming Jamie Bibelheimer as our new transportation planning trainee. She joined us this week and will be in the very near future communicating directly with SEDA COG. Moving into the amendment for high friction surface. We are interested in the approval of the amendment so that we can move forward with the interest in those projects. Interstate 80 is the Clinton County area, just west of the US 220 Auction Road interchange. And that will involve a number of, I want to say, at least 1,500 feet, if not more, of high friction surface treatment placed on the interstate to reduce slip and accidents in those locations. The Route 74 location is in the Tuscarora Mountain Road area, and it's a sharp turn. It's a 180-degree turn, like a U-turn in that area, and we've identified some safety concerns at that location as well. These types of surfaces, as you mentioned, increase the safety on the roadways and the traveling public, and are a low-cost improvement that improves the roads within the area. Are there any other details or any questions about those?
Any questions from the members about the amendment?
All right, thank you.
Mark, if there's no further discussion, do we have a motion to approve the District 2 amendment for the high friction surface treatment application?
So moved.
Motion by Greg, Montour County, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Katie, Clinton County, thank you so much. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll follow up with PennDOT Central Office and get an electronic STIP amendment process for that change that will take effect. We also have in your packet, starting page 17, kind of the normal administrative modifications. These are the things that don't rise to the level of an amendment. They're not a new project. They're not using federal funds. They're not in excess of $2 million. So these are just kind of the normal course of business changes that occur that we consider and review, and we usually approve these as well as a body. So they're kind of more informational. They start on page 17 with the District 2 portion. And so we'll bring it out for Mark if there's things you want to touch on or highlight here, and then questions from the group to follow.
All right, thank you, Steve. Looking through the administrative actions, one of the biggest actions is at the bottom of page 17 for the construction phase of the bridge preservation project. There were some cost increases that were needed, some funds that were needed to adjust for cost increases due to material costs, increased material costs. This is the Renova Bridge that goes over Norfolk Southern, and the Island Road Bridge in Clinton County. Moving on to page 18, we have at the top there an advance of funding. We're advancing funding and utilizing available resources within the infrastructure investment reserve line item, as well as the standard reserve line item to advance the preliminary engineering phase and fully support and fund the preliminary engineering phase for the East Charles Street resurfacing project. Just below that, I heard earlier, Katie was talking a little bit about the solar powered chevrons. We have a administrative action there. Actually, that is a future amendment at that location for 22 solar powered chevrons. This is in the Mifflin County area, just south of Lewistown, near the interchange with Business 22, where it connects back into 322. We've recognized some friction conditions there, and this type of area is going to have the high friction surface treatment, but it's also going to have the solar powered chevrons that really are another low cost safety feature, believed to be low maintenance cost and improve safety through those areas in all conditions, through all types of scenarios and all types of whether daylight or nighttime as well. Moving into page 19, we'll be looking at some use of safety funds. I guess we had talked already about the high friction surface, and moving then down to the bottom there for the Bald Eagle Trail phase 5 is looking at it's adding the construction phase funds to the current tip. This addition of construction phase funds would allow for the department to continue to proceed with environmental clearance documents rather than delaying that process and delaying that project. This will help advance that and get those clearance documents in place so that we can work towards supporting Clinton County and the interest in the trail for a 2023 let. On the last page, there are local retro bridge adjustments that were needed to balance between two previously planned local retro bridge agreements. Balancing of those funds will allow for those projects to be, I believe those projects are completed, and this will allow for the reimbursement to those local municipalities. So that's all I have at this time. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mark. I see in the chat menu, there are a couple of questions, I think, from Frank and Jean. It was just in reference, I think, to you talking about the high friction surface treatment amendment. And
it would be these chevrons. I noted that there was listed in the projects as an amendment. Frank's question is future amendment. We would look for support of that project at this time.
Okay, yeah, because in the June meeting, we did act on at least one of those. I think that's why it was popping up on here, just as that's the one at the top of page 19. So that amendment was already approved at the June 10th MPO meeting.
And on the middle of page 18 for the SR 22 solar powered chevrons.
Yeah, guys, I just asked the question just so we had clarity, and I see Gene was chiming in as well as saying the same thing. So basically what you have today, you have management action, or I should say MPMS number 118-284, which Mark shared on that chart. And then I'm hearing that 118-109, 118-284, 118-400, and then also 118-288. These are all covered on pages 18 and 19 of your packet. I just want to make sure if they were already previously approved, that's fine. I assume they were taken care of at June 10th, like you said. If not, they need to be voted on today.
Okay, thanks, Frankie. Are you aware there, Mark? Is there any separate fiscal chart that we need to cover today for any amendment votes, or is it just the 118-288 and 118-284 that we already passed?
I believe it is the 118-288 and the 118-284.
Okay, great, thank you. So we should be good to go on that. Are there other questions on the District 2 administrative actions in the report?
I have a question for any District 2 person, really. It's about the RAS system. Is that, they were migrating it, I guess, from one server to another. Is that finished yet? Anybody know?
This is the reimbursement system?
Yeah, the contracting for the grants, for our grant.
Katie, I am not aware of that at this time.
Okay, thanks. Just curious.
Okay, if there are no further questions, do we have a motion to approve the District 2 administrative modifications within the packet?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. Lucy, for the second, do we have, or for the motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Katie, for the second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you much for covering and presenting those, Mark, and thanks to everyone for the discussion. Another item we have here is an amendment, and this is within District 3. It's on page 21 of your packet. As you all are aware, there's been a lot of inflationary pressures over the past 10 to 12 months or so, and supply chain issues, and we're seeing steel, asphalt, diesel prices rise substantially. So we have seen cost increases kind of across the board, and there's a project on Interstate 80 that John's going to cover here today with some cost increases and put that forward as an amendment. So thank you, John.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, this is one of 5 projects on Interstate 80 that are grouped together for one ECMS let. Basically, it stretches east and westbound from roughly just past the Northumberland border into Montour County, almost to Danville, with a portion of an ROP video and lighting upgrade done at the Danville interchange with 80 to 54. This section is a reconstruction portion of that. It's towards the end of the project towards Danville. And when we did our first estimate, which was done around December, we didn't see these increases. We had a bit of an increase, but when now, as we're at the point to finalize the bid package in ECMS, when we took a look at what the items are now costing with the inflationary factors worked into them, we saw significant increases across all the projects. Just to let you know, there's 2 other projects on the management, just standard management actions that had increases that are part of this. They're just going by section numbers are 80-159 and 80-182. Then there's 2 projects that are rather large that are mills and overlays, 80-124 and 80-129 that are being covered under the interstate tip. We asked for $12.5 million increase for those, and graciously the interstate group accepted and the PMC group accepted that as well. This project itself went to PMC for approval, as it is a $2.6 million+ increase. PMC approved that on Wednesday, the increase, and now we're here asking for your approval as well for the amendment, so we can do the cost increase. The funds are coming from the line item. There will be a bit of an adjustment needed when we roll over to the 23 tip, most likely depending on what, again, not getting too technical terms, what they give us this year and what we still have to pay for the following years. And again, it's, you know, the reiterate what Steve said, it's due to the, almost entirely due to the cost of steel, asphalt and diesel that we've seen over the past few months. And I'll take any questions.
I just need a clarification on page 21, 8160. We have the increase of funds listed under 23 and 24, yet in the remarks we're showing 22 and 23.
Oh, I might have just missed.
Just a
Yeah,
clerical.
probably just a
So the
clerical.
remarks should say 23, 24.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure they were lined up accordingly.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing, to make the PMC meeting, I was under a time crunch to to make
No
what I
problem.
found out. And also, you know, not to, you know, kind of push this a little bit, but if I don't get the funding and we don't obligate the funds, we lose $6 million of program funds on this tip that won't roll over to after October. And I don't know if I can find $6 million extra compared to also what we have to find with the cost increases that we've been seeing. So, yeah, you know, again, that's unfortunate, but we really do need the
Well,
amendment.
unless there are any other questions, I'll move to accept the changes as submitted.
Great. Thank you, Greg, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Frank Hampton, second.
Frank, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, hearing none. Thank you, John, for the update. Thanks for coordinating that through the interstate group statewide and the PMC and getting those approvals. Yeah, very consequential, important projects. And as we roll into the next tip to kind of get these funds locked in as we roll into the 2023 and not have negative spillover, you know, impacts on the existing projects that are on there. So thank you for that. The kind of lower level adjustments begin on page 22 of your packet. So John, again, as well, if there's ones you want to highlight here for changes, please.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go basically overview. You know, I explained the 80 projects that you'll see in there. A lot of what you're gonna see in there is increases for consultant work that we're gearing up since we've added a decent amount of projects with the new bill. We've pushed a lot of our projects and some of these new projects to consultant just so we can keep up. A lot of that you'll see for the pre-construction phases is why we have to increase, is it costs a bit more to have a consultant do the work than us do it ourselves. And then the other good portion of it is, of course, construction phase increases that we've seen. And again, they haven't really risen to the level of meeting amendments, except for, you know, the one we just discussed, but you know, they are there and prevalent. So I haven't been having enough money right now to cover them, and I think I hopefully I was predicting a bit of a rainy day on the new tip, so I'm hoping I predicted enough of a rainy day when we roll over that I can compensate for all this. But there might be some, I don't think we're gonna cut any projects, but there might be some deferring some to a later date when we move to the new tip. And again, also a lot of these actions are preparing for the end of the federal fiscal year and the tip rollover.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions on specific actions for the members for John? If not, we look for a motion to approve the District 3 administrative modifications, please.
I'll move.
Motion by Greg Muller, thank you. Do we have a second?
Eric Staley, second.
Eric, thank you for the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, hearing none, the motion has been properly moved and seconded and passed. So thank you for that. And thanks, John, for your hard work. I know there's a lot of balancing going on right now with all these cost increases and as we move toward the 2023 tips. So thanks for coordinating all that. For just the benefit of you all, if you haven't seen, when the state General Assembly had passed the new state budget, there was increased funding as part of that to address the match requirements for the federal funds we're getting through the bipartisan infrastructure law. That increased additional funding came largely 80% federal funding. So there was state funding that had to be received and allocated to fully maximize the value of the investments from the federal government. So I think a lot of that was addressed by the state budget. And then there's some other things that can be done innovatively for the match, kind of using the tool credits or some cases where you can get a higher than 80% federal match. So we were pleased to see that budget passed by the state and addressed, and that we can fully maximize the federal funds that are flowing from the bipartisan infrastructure law. So any comments from any of the PennDOT folks or Federal Highway Administration on that? Okay, thank you. Next item on our packet here as we're moving along is also to hear from John Rank with our normal typical update on the CSVT project. There's been a lot has happened since June on that, so he's going to report the update, and then we have a few visuals with some photographs. If you haven't seen the project corridor, been out there since the highway was open in the northern section and the groundbreaking on the southern section. So John, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Well, back in June, if you weren't there or weren't able to attend, we had two events, a public event and a ribbon cutting. On Saturday, June 25th, approximately 6,000 people crossed the CSVT River Bridge by walking, biking, or other means before the new roadway was opened to traffic. And then on Wednesday, June 29th, around 200 invited guests celebrated the opening of the new river bridge and the roadway for the CSVT northern section and groundbreaking for the southern section. The northern section of CSVT was opened to traffic in early July. The northern section is still under construction to build a mile of roadway at the northern end of the project. The final section will be open to traffic this fall, and all 4 lanes of the north section will be open to traffic between Montana and Whitfield. And I'll take any questions on the northern section. And again, that is also around the fall time. We do plan on having the connection of 405 kind of old to 405 new. They're just past Montana and where the stop sign used to be. It will no longer be a stop sign. It'll just be a straight through all the way 405 there. So look for that. And again, towards the fall, we should have that done. And just to let everybody know that that old section of asphalt that say from the stop sign back to Montana, the old 147, that will be removed and then basically be reclaimed back to the earth. So we'll seed it and soil it, and that'll be it. I think there is maybe we're keeping a small access road for PPNL in there, but I think other than that, everything's gonna be.
Will
pushed back.
you keep the easements or will it be sold to somebody?
I think right now we are going to hold on to the right of way at this point. Again, with the proximity to, basically an interchange, we generally would keep a large amount of, right of way anyways, as this is an interstate lookalike. So
Yeah.
I think at this point, our intention is to keep it.
I was on a separate meeting this morning, the Greater Susquehanna Valley Chamber Transportation Committee, and Ted Deptola gave his update on the construction as well. And a question was posed to him about any high wind advisors, if they've been issued since it was open, for the bridge and for truck traffic in particular. And I guess nothing to date, so that's good. And hopefully that trend will continue. It's a sizable, high bridge over the river, and those signage, installations are out there to warn truck drivers of high wind situations.
And as of, we had some pretty decent storms roll through, and we're here to say that they didn't trip or anything to say that the truck drivers needed to move to the center lanes or get off. But, and again, I think our worst case scenario was that the trucks would move to the middle lanes of the bridge. And that would probably be the worst case scenario.
Hope so.
We all do. Any other questions on the northern section? Moving on.
Just a general question, John. I was asked, I don't know how pertinent it might be, or if it's even in the planning phase. With these large bridges that we're constructing, question came up about suicide fence. Evidently up on 476 and 81, there is a large expanse of bridge, and they have put up, I think it's around Carbondale, like an 8-foot fence that runs right along the roadway of the bridge.
Mhm.
I was asked if that is in the construction for these two bridges.
Generally, we
I
wouldn't,
wouldn't want to jump off.
we
a damn
would, I
bridge
don't
and
think,
fall.
you know, generally, you know, we do look at it. However, being a limited access with not allowing pedestrians on the roadway, you know, we don't generally put, you know, pedestrian safety devices on the bridge like that. I would think if there would be, you know, if we would have an incident in anywhere, and not just on that bridge, but if we started seeing like an incident on our bridges, that would be relooked at.
Okay, but it's not something that's being considered right now because of limited access.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree, you know,
I
that's,
can give that answer back. That sounds good to me.
and generally, you know, pedestrian, you know, somebody's not really supposed to be out there. Well, now saying somebody not gonna pull up there in their car and hop out and, God forbid, hop over, you know, the railing, then, you know, it's tough to stop anybody from doing that truthfully, even with the, you know, they're just gonna go to the next bridge that doesn't have, you know, a fence, so.
Yeah.
You know,
It was asked, so I
Yeah.
figured I'd bring it up.
again, I think if we saw some sort of like, you know, incidents, reoccurring incidents where this is happening, that, you know, we would definitely look into it, but, you know, again, I don't see that as an issue in our area, luckily too much.
I
And
didn't
hopefully it
think
never
would be.
will ever be, but
I
yeah.
wouldn't want to, no, don't call me to come clean up.
Anything else in the
Thank you.
northern section? Moving on to the southern, the notice to proceed for the first of the 3 contracts for the southern section. The earthwork contract was issued in May. The contract is performing prep work throughout the project, including clearing trees, constructing access roads, and acquiring materials. The contract includes 4.5 million cubic yards of earthwork, various drainage and E&S facilities, and upgrades to a few adjacent roadways that will be constructed. A right turn lane is being constructed at State Route 15 southbound in the intersection of Route 15 southbound and Grangers Road intersection, just south of Winfield. There will also be prep work on Attic Road and at the intersection of State Route 204 and Mill Road. So look for look for construction work to happen around those areas first, and then again, trees and everything else within the project area. And then again, in the following year, they'll be really ramping up for the earthwork. Again, it should be pretty hidden like the northern section was, as this is new roadway. Final design work is ongoing for the 2 remaining construction contracts and are anticipated to be let over the next few years. Currently, the preparation of the structure contract to construct 9 new structures and to construct noise walls is proceeding, with construction anticipated to start in 2024. Regarding the noise walls, FHWA recently concurred with final design noise analysis for the southern section. The next step is to obtain input from each neighborhood where a noise wall is warranted, feasible, and reasonable. First, to confirm that the wall is desired, and second, to determine what texture and color are preferred for the side of the wall facing the neighborhood. Neighborhood meetings are scheduled later this month to obtain input, and invitations were recently sent to property owners and residents who would be benefited by the proposed noise walls. The final contract to construct the pavement and upgrade the interchange is ongoing, with construction anticipated to start in 2026 and then open to traffic in 2027. I'll take any questions for the southern.
Just, I wonder if Matt or anybody else has heard any feedback from the federal government on the discretionary grant that was applied for to offset some of the state funds.
Not that we've heard yet, but we're pretty hopeful, and that would really help the state out, with state funds if that does get approved.
What was that requested number?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think we requested for most of the
Yeah.
southern
I think it
section.
was over 80 million.
Yeah.
That would help.
And again, as I told Greg, unfortunately at this point, I don't have a update for 54 and 642. I'm kind of waiting for some stuff to come in from some people, and they're waiting for some stuff to come in from some people. So we know how that kind of goes. So hopefully here in October, I have a pretty solid update for that.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments for John?
Thanks. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for leading us through those items. I did want to go back quickly to page 30. I failed to mention one of those normal insertions we have in your packet for projects that were previously approved by the MPO. I'll just highlight the 2 access road projects, the Sealands Grove Industrial Park, coordinating with Aaron Chris, the project manager, local project manager in District 3, and also Betsy Lockwood, a little bit on those. And the cost estimate has risen for the Sealands Grove project, since that was initially approved. I think they're seeking some other grant funding right now to hopefully satisfy some of that, whether it be through multimodal or potentially another ARC local access road request. So hopefully we'll see some further momentum on that. And then the Milton Industrial Park as well. There's run into a few issues there as that's being developed, but hopefully come 2023, maybe those projects will be let, and we'll see construction get back on track for those. And then on the access road front, just to mention as well, if there are candidates you have, please coordinate with Betsy Lockwood. They're still in that mode where they prepared 2-page scopes, essentially proposals. That's the first step. I think there's 1 candidate right now within the MPO region that Betsy's working with. And then come December, if they want a full application, if it's solicited, would need to be submitted to DCD. So this can be addressed on a rolling basis. If there's candidates you have, there's going to be jobs generated or jobs retained, and there's going to be multiple beneficiaries to an local access road. Feel free to continue to plot along on those and get those submitted to Betsy, and she can really facilitate that for you. Thank you. Moving along on the agenda, we're up to item G. This is our normal Unified Planning Work Program update. There's been quite a bit of activity since we met in June. Page 35 of your packet is our normal reporting. And I'll highlight a couple items here. On the 2020 to 2022 work program, come June 30th, that was closed out. We'll be hearing about one of the studies that was undertaken as part of that, the Hogan Boulevard bicycle pedestrian study in Clinton County, shortly, just after this agenda item. So we'll get updates on that. There was some equipment we purchased. I'll highlight one of those a little bit later on the agenda as well, the trail counting equipment at the close of that fiscal year. The 2023 to 2026 TIP update, further down page 35. After our June adoption, we did submit all the required materials and documentation to PennDOT Central Office. So it's working through the review process by PennDOT and Federal Highway Administration, and then the State Transportation Commission as well for approvals. So the new TIP will take effect October 1st. And like John mentioned, we'll probably see a lot of adjustments when we get into that new federal fiscal year for the October 7th MPO meeting. So just to be on the lookout and aware of that, there'll be a lot of modifications being made to address that changeover. The Title VI program that we adopted, the MPO, back on June 10th, that was finalized, working in tandem with our friends at Gannett Fleming and Michelle and her team. So we received that documentation. It's posted on our website now as well. So how we comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and our public participation plan and limited English proficiency plan. All those current documents and versions are now on our website. The MPO bylaws, we had heavy action items at the June 10th meeting. That was approved as well by the members. Those amended bylaws have been published on our website, and they were taken to the SEDA COG board at its June 22nd meeting and approved as well. Since the SEDA COG board does appoint 3 voting members to the MPO, we wanted to make sure we took that step to present them to the board as well, and they were amenable with the changes we made, just to highlight current practices and the virtual public involvement and things that have changed since the initial 2012 version. Page 36, we had the links within your electronic packet, but the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, PennDOT did submit its statewide plan, which is required to tap into and access these funds. So that link's there for you if you want to refer to that, and also a new state electric vehicle mobility plan as well. It kind of has more specific action items that the state will pursue. And a lot of the initial focus is going to be on the alternative fuels vehicle corridor. So Interstate 80 primarily in this area until there's new additions to that. So once all those kind of gaps are closed for charging stations, then additional ones can be taken up with that funding program. Further down, we had shared over email the new traffic signal technologies grant program, which is going to be run similar to the Green Light Go program, but it's some new money that came from the General Assembly with the state budget, 5 million statewide, at least for this round, for current traffic signal technology updates. So we shared those resources and the links if you want to take a look at the program requirements. The applications will be accepted starting September 1 until September 30th. Page 37, the CFA multimodal application round closed July 31st. We at least had seen 2 project sponsors reach out to us for consistency letters, and so those are enclosed in your packet in Columbia and Northumberland counties, identifying that those projects are consistent with the long-range plan and our priorities for the region. So I think usually come November is when the CFA board approves those grants, so we'll be on the lookout for that and things that maybe impact the PennDOT multimodal or potentially TA set-aside and other programs. On the TA set-aside front there, the next block down on page 37, we're still hearing that probably summer of 2023 will be the next solicitation. So if you're working on project ideas, please be aware of that. Try and do as much as you can to advance any of the preliminary design or engineering or community outreach on those projects to get in a good position for that application round. The last round had 64 approved projects at $54 million. I think this next solicitation will be able to entertain higher values because of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So it'll go a little bit further. So please continue to work along those fronts. And if you have questions, comments, let us know. PennDOT connects toward the bottom. As mentioned, we're going to hear about the Hogan Boulevard shortly. That was a special study funded through our work program. And a second one was the US Route 522 corridor improvement study that the Michael Baker consultant team is working through our open end on. And so that one has a public meeting scheduled for August 16th at 5 p.m. at the Snyder County East Building. If that's of interest to any of the folks. Lincoln Kaufman couldn't be with us here today, but he's been involved all throughout on that project, and hopefully we'll see some action on those recommendations and hopefully some good public input on August 16th. And then come October, we'll have the findings of that study presented to the MPO for acceptance as well. Page 38, continuing on the CSVT special impact study that we had done jointly with the Williamsport MPO and accepted in November 2021. There was a supplemental study that was submitted by Williamsport MPO, and that was funded to implement the recommendations and have a task force or a work group really hone in on those and make sure we're getting action on the recommendations, coordinating the transportation and land use concerns there. So there was a first meeting of that task force on July 12th, and so we're working through the priority list, and we'll continue to coordinate with all of you that are affected by that corridor, primarily in Union, Northumberland, Lycoming counties. I'll mention also on page 38 the highway performance monitoring system. Catherine and our intern are working on that. There's samples that we need to collect annually and receive those sheets from PennDOT, and then to go out in the field and verify the information or update it. So Catherine's working through, what's it this time, over 100 and some sites, sample sites?
160 total.
Great. So we'll report more on that for you as it moves forward, but by early December, we'll need to have those submitted to the PennDOT for processing and filing, and we'll get a after action kind of report on what they find as well. Finally, on our staff activity report, page 39, we heard a lot about HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program funds earlier, particularly with Mark Schultz and his update, the high friction surface treatments and some other lower cost treatments that are being done. We've been kind of looking at the network screening results, things that are in our long range plan, comments from the members on crash clusters or concerns that you have, and documenting that and coordinating with the PennDOT district traffic units. So as part of that, we're going to look to hopefully in October schedule some field views of some sites and line up candidate projects for using the highway safety program funds or other funds to address areas of high crash concerns, severe injuries and fatalities especially. So wanted to make sure you're aware of that well in advance, and we'll coordinate with MPO members to make sure you're invited to any field views and the local governments that are affected by those sites as well. And then hopefully that'll put us in a good position for the next TIP update and have some of those safety funds committed. Can be a little bit difficult to get them through just eligibility wise. There's certain things that they have to meet parameter wise, and you have actual crash results that are above what's predicted for the roadway, but we could still go out and maybe identify some other lower cost or other options. So be glad to participate and collaborate with you all in that process. On the LTAP front, John Keel is taking up more of those, essentially all those responsibilities now, and kind of assisting him as he's getting up to speed. But he'll be handling all the LTAP, class scheduling, technical assistance, coordination, and the special things that we do through LTAP, like equipment operator training and such. He's on vacation right now, couldn't be with us here today, but you'll be seeing more information from him on LTAP in the future. And we're wrapping up the 2021 to 2022 LTAP annual report right now, and we'll share that with you for the next meeting. And then Catherine, if there's any updates you want to give on the major employer critical facility inventory, please, and the consultation members.
So for the critical facility update, we sent out requests to all the counties to receive any updated data. I think we're still hovering at about half of the counties having responded. So I'm going to send out some reminder emails and just make sure we get as much information as we can before we fully start the critical facility process. And the major employer spreadsheets will be circulating around as well. So
When did you send that out? I don't remember getting it.
the critical facilities were out in early July, I want to say. It was, I think you were probably CC'd. I sent it mostly to the GIS personnel at all the counties.
All right.
But I think I gathered all of you on a CC there for those.
Okay.
just
Did
so
you
you
get
are
something
aware.
back from Clinton?
I don't think I have Clinton yet. I'll
Okay.
send a reminder to him, but yeah, the major employers will be coming out.
Thank you, Catherine. This section of your agenda at page 40, wanted to give an update. It's been a little bit of time, but the local bridge removal bundle, coordinated recently with Aaron Christ and got an update on those projects. If you recall, they were kind of low use or redundant bridges, and there was a group project along with North Central RPO to complete removals of those local bridges. And Aaron gave me an update on that, still in the design phase, study phase, but 6 of the bridges have design phase work orders, 3 in District 3, 2 in District 10, and 1 in District 2 that expect to be executed in September. So getting closer to that process of getting those finalized for design purposes, and then removals of those local bridges, hopefully with a construction letting in 2024. So some of the projects had to be dropped off at this time just due to funding constraints. But those remaining bridges will be designed or constructed as additional funds can be identified in the future. So any questions on those or anything, John, you wanted to add on to that?
Oh, and again, it's just, really what we were looking at is what bridges we could deliver the fastest, and that didn't have to go through such a long process and have less issues if we removed them from the local population. So that's basically was the reasoning why we selected them. This was a bit of a challenge. I don't think we would go quite as big as this if we did a bundle again, especially across so many different municipal lines and even across so many district lines. It's been a challenge for Aaron to keep this project on track, but we're getting there. We'll have something here.
Great, thank you for that update. Yeah, certainly tried to pick out the fruit that didn't have much utility impacts or right-of-way impacts or local opposition, or maybe board of supervisors changed and didn't support whatever. So some things happen through the process and procedurally and funding wise, but thanks for keeping that ball moving forward.
Yep, unfortunately, some people want to get rid of it, or rid of a bridge until they're ready to get rid of it, and then they don't want to get rid of the bridge.
How many bridges were originally in that large bundle?
I go back, I want to say right around a dozen bridges.
Approximately
Around
half.
10, yeah, around 10 of those, so a little over half, I think.
A little
we're
over
gonna
half.
get there. And I know some of those even got weeded out, even the original list we looked at got weeded down to like the 10 or 8 or so that we looked at, and then that got, weeded down to what we can actually deliver.
Thank you, John. We have the TA set aside update progress reporting in here as well, page 42. We'll mention that the Lewisburg Bowling Greenway phase 1 project was completed. We were out for the ribbon cutting on that on June 24th, so great success there and a nice connection to the Buffalo Valley Rail Trail and restoration work that was underway and completed, and obviously the Kidsburg Park and recreational amenities as well. So we're glad to see that. And in Katie's area, she has the ribbon cutting scheduled for the Bald Eagle Valley Trail on August 17th next week.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
And it's already done and open, which is like so thrilling to me.
Excellent. Commend you on that. Look forward to being there next week and getting on the bridge.
Yeah.
And the final project then to go to construction from that 2018 round is the North Branch Canal Levee Trail in Danville Borough. Some of the flood wall raising and then a nicer surface for walking and biking along there. So still estimated 2023 let, but yeah, things are at least progressing on that to hopefully get that one finally designed, and that'll be our last from that selection round. We had a banner crop of TA set aside projects approved, so good progress being made. The most recent round was the 2021. We did have the modification that Mark Schultz ran through earlier. The Bald Eagle Valley Trail Phase 5 was on there. That $1 million that was approved by the state back in April. And then the second project is in the city of Sunbury for the Market Street streetscape. So we'll continue to monitor those and offer any support as we need to. And we put our typical reporting on the HOP highway occupancy permits and traffic impact studies there. So if there's things that catch your attention, feel free to follow up with us. But since we have access to the system, we can monitor activity for the HOPs and any traffic impact studies that are being submitted. And hopefully you're involved in that process land development wise and bringing any issues to bear on it. But Kristen now has access to the system and join our team. So we thank her for putting that update together for y'all. But if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And then we just put those consistency letters, as we mentioned in the packet as well, for the PCD multimodal grants and for Katie's application to CFA for the trail grant as well for phase 6 of Bald Eagle Valley Trail.
I have a question. I have municipalities who, at the very last minute, send me a request for a land use letter on their PennDOT multimodal or CFA multimodal. And I never knew they were planning to apply. We never got any kind of support from you for these generally smaller projects. Do they stand a chance of getting funded without SEDA COG's knowledge or support? Basically, I'm just curious.
Yeah, definitely. And right on the CFA side, a lot of times we won't see any of those. Justin reached out to us, and I think Eric Staley for these that were applying, and
Yeah,
then we went through, looked at the details, and said how they were consistent with our planning process at the
Okay.
MPO level. So it's kind of part of the equation, but it's not like it's going to be the driving factor if they don't have a consistent
Okay.
letter.
I was just curious, yeah.
But that being said, it is always good to have the MPO involved with at least an FYI. They would appreciate that.
Telling them, but then I find out about them at the last minute.
That's fine. We understand.
Thank you, Frank. And then for the PennDOT, at least we will always receive those applications. We have a chance to review them, do a check and comment on them. And we bring those to the forum of the MPO for things that you're aware of that we're not and want to raise about those as well. So at least on the PennDOT side, it's more clear in terms of the involvement and activity. Thank you, Katie. Well, if there's nothing further without any more delay, we'll get to our presentation portion, and you can stop hearing from me, and we'll hear from Carrie Long. Janet Fleming's going to present the findings of the Hogan Boulevard Bicycle Pedestrians PennDOT Connect study in Clinton County.
All right, just to confirm, I'm sharing my screen. I hope you all can
Yes.
see it, but please let me know if not.
Yeah, we
Wonderful.
can see it.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining and for your time this morning and your attention to this exciting and important safety study. My name is Carrie Long. I am a planner with Gannett Fleming, and while I am virtual, you are joined by my esteemed colleague, Michelle Brummer, who is in the room with you all. So Michelle and I worked on this study over the spring, and we are pleased to present this morning the Hogan Boulevard Bicycle and Pedestrian or Bike Ped Safety Study. This aimed to equip SEDA COG and its partners and municipalities with Vision Zero recommendations to improve the safety of this important corridor. Oh no, I hit the zoom in, apologies. All right, let's hit the next slide button. There we go, okay. So before we dive into the actual study itself, I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page with what is Vision Zero? It is a global safety initiative and a paradigm that believes all traffic deaths and crashes are preventable. It's accepted by PennDOT and many other agencies and municipalities with the goal of reducing to zero no traffic deaths or crashes as much as possible, right? We want to make our corridors safe. We want to prevent these traumatic and devastating events. Beyond just serious crashes, this is also a paradigm to look towards reducing near miss or just unsafe encounters between different roadway users. Actually, a cyclist from this project and from our outreach called them hold your breath spots, which I think is a perfect representation of those moments where you're passing closely or you feel unsafe. We want to eliminate those. At its core, Vision Zero is really a community-driven and context-specific approach where we want to hear from the community. Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? How can we make this safer for you? So engagement, education, and using data-driven tools are really fundamental to Vision Zero plans and priorities. So this is the framework that informed our approach and our deliverables for this safety study. Here is an image of Hogan Boulevard, and this is the guiding question here. How can we make Hogan Boulevard safer, more comfortable, and more enjoyable for walking, biking, rolling, using the corridor in these ways? To answer that question, we identified 4 areas: infrastructure, operations, policy, and education. Our study identified improvements in these 4 areas and looked towards ways we can improve the safety of Hogan Boulevard by addressing these 4 areas. To build our recommendations and conduct our safety study, we looked towards the existing conditions, examining factors such as the roadway design, function, travel patterns, looking at the surrounding very commercial context and how it fits within the larger Clinton County community. We visited the corridor several times. We experienced what it's like to walk and bike there. And we spoke with the folks that do this every day to identify the priority issues for the corridor. And of course, we reviewed the local plans that touch this or are relevant, anything that would help inform the corridor's context and how we can build a Vision Zero plan that both incorporates and amplifies what is already the values of this corridor. In short, to summarize, we learned about the corridor, we identified those pain points or pinch points, and then we developed strategies to address them towards a Vision Zero plan. So let's dive into the corridor itself. The study area is this 1 mile stretch of Hogan Boulevard or State Route 150 located in Clinton County, and well, it's actually at the, it touches many municipalities. So the corridor spans from Mill Hall Borough. You can see here on the left, the 1 mile stretch then concludes as you enter Flemington Borough. Farther along that path is the city of Lock Haven, which is a driver for many of the travel through the corridor. It's also within Bald Eagle Township. And as you can see from this map, it really is like we heard from folks that have participated, it's a key connector. It's the heart of the county. It's the county's downtown or retail hub. There's a lot of activity generated. As you can see here, primarily commercial, lots of big box stores that folks are visiting frequently and important destinations. But it's also a major employment hub for the folks that work at these places, but also major industries like Croda and Avery to the southeast, First Tissue across the creek there, and then other schools and other things that are key access points for folks using this corridor. I'm gonna jump past a lot of the analysis to get to the real potatoes of the soup, or whatever that idiom is. The key takeaway here is that it's a busy corridor and it's an active corridor, and access for walking, biking, rolling is actually highly desired if it can be safe. The map at right is showing a bike path that is softly recommended, but also is the route many current cyclists take. Well, they will go far out of their way to use the parking lots or back roads through, this is Camelot Estates here, to avoid interacting with the corridor. I think that's a key point, because cycling this extra distance isn't necessarily fun. So to go out of your way really highlights how the corridor is perceived. Similarly, on our tours, we saw so many tow paths or desire paths showing where travelers have been using the off-road areas to walk around the corridor. We also, it's not as shown, but we saw pedestrians walking along the raised median here, which you would think is perhaps more exposed, but for families with strollers or other folks using wheeled devices, that's actually a much safer and easier method of traversing the corridor. I did want to just toss out my favorite idiom for active transportation, because I know this morning we've been speaking a lot about bridges. Some people said, oh, I didn't see many cyclists on the corridor. And when I hear that, I always think, well, you don't build a bridge by counting who swims across the water. So I do think it's important to approach this corridor and the opportunities of investing in active transportation facilities by understanding that with the option to safely bike, walk, roll along the corridor, people will come. So what is it like currently to walk, to bike, walk, or roll along this study area, along this 1 mile stretch? To figure that out, we hosted 2 public meetings, one a traditional public meeting and one a pop-up event actually on the corridor itself, where we tried to, be available, point out things, and also capture some impromptu participation from folks using the corridor. The key takeaways here in this slide, I won't read through all of them, but I think the key points are that there is expectations from new developments, the pool renovation being one of the key ones that will drive more interest in being able to walk and bike, especially for younger users that may not drive yet, but may work or go to activities at these areas. The large vehicles present, this is a high freight corridor. It's also an area with a lot of personal vehicles that are quite large or lifted. And that ties into this idea of safety, the top point, and perhaps the most important, being so entwined with driving culture, or the expectation that everyone drives versus expecting to see folks walking or biking on the roadway. We also hosted tours or trips to actually experience, to walk a mile in the shoes of folks doing this every day. The first being a walking tour in March, where we began here at the Country Club Lane intersection. We walked the full extent of the study area from Pennsylvania in Mill Hall, and then down to Canal in Flemington Borough. Excuse me. This was both open to the study management team and community members to join us. We wanted to capture what it feels like to walk on both sides of the road. What are the pinch points that you perceive? What is the general experience? And then tracking things like signal timing, pedestrian flows or movements, points of conflict, etc. Similarly, we did a biking tour twice of the area to capture that experience, that unique experience of actually traveling within the lanes as a cyclist, as a more vulnerable roadway user. At the bottom here, you can see one of the cool things we did was we used as an in-kind service eye tracking equipment to gather that authentic visual experience of a cyclist navigating Hogan Boulevard. This helps us to really understand what it's like to ride along the corridor, to track what is capturing attention, or what infrastructure, facilities, signage designs are most effective versus what maybe you aren't able to see in the moment. If you can see in this image at right, there actually is a cyclist tucked in there, trying to negotiate through movement with an intersection while there's a turn lane slipping into one of these commercial developments. And I point that out because the next image is actually from the eye tracking glasses from that cyclist perspective. And these will be a series of slides here where it is stills from the video itself. When you see a red circle, that's the gaze target. So that's saying, what is the cyclist focusing their eyes on in that moment? What are they looking at and what is capturing their attention? So you can see from this photo, and I want to be very clear about this because I think it's important. This was midday. This was a beautiful day. This was a weekday. So all factors that when you look at the crash data, you're thinking of, busier times or lighting conditions being not great or weather being not great. So this is best case scenario, right? That these images are captured. So it's certainly going to bias perspective and the experience. So just want to put a little footnote there. One of the key pain points was this bridge area heading into Flemington, and I recognize this was also a area or moment that really incited interest in this study, where within the last 2 years, a traveler using a motorized wheelchair actually tipped off this quite narrow bridge here into traffic. And I wanted to point out, these are areas where the right-of-way is constrained. And so as a cyclist, maybe you've been benefiting from a bikeable shoulder through the commercial area. You're heading into Flemington and all of a sudden that shoulder doesn't exist. Not only that, it has an actual, elevated curb there that you have to give some clearance to. And when you are looking both with hills and with corners or curvature of the roadway, there's some visibility constraints there. And so this was an area where I will say, holding your breath is a great way to put it. This is certainly an area of many near miss. It's also a hotspot identified from crash data and from conversations with emergency response community within Clinton County. Oh, and I should have pointed out, you see the gaze point there, looking at the wheels of the truck to make sure there's enough space. I hope that illustrates what it's like, even with is this 4-foot passing distance, it feels very different when you have no ability to jostle left or right. When we look towards the commercial corridor, this is also an area prone to flooding, so there are many grates purposefully, which is good, but it does often push cyclists further into the lane who may not be as comfortable sharing the lane with vehicles, especially on a busier road like this. Additionally, these grates and such will present debris and other items that are at best, unpleasant to ride over. And so you're kind of negotiating movement, you're figuring out how you move through the corridor, but you're also avoiding, these elements along the roadway. Again, here's a gaze point. You're looking at that, you're making sure that you have clearance there. So while these are very innocuous, it's right, it's something that captures your attention and takes your attention away from moving around and with the other users of the roadway. This is from the walking tour from the other angle, right? That same pinch point heading into Flemington, and just the sense of exposure to the vehicles surrounding you. With the narrow bridge, you're on this side of the roadway because the pedestrian path is on this side, but before and after, it's not as friendly as perhaps the other side is leading up. So as you'll see in the next slides, that induces some less safe options. But What I really want to highlight with this image is the travelers that are walking and rolling along the corridor, and how they're choosing to use the space. East of the bridge where we are here, you have to, like we said, use that side to cross the road, but there's not a signalized intersection for, I think, about half a mile or so. It's quite a stretch. So if you're walking, and Michelle and I can vouch from this experience and from our soggy sneakers, that you want to cross the road and avoid that marshy area and walk on the parking lot area. It's a bit preferable, but that requires a crossing of, 2 in a turn lane of traffic. So when we think about the corridor and the safety today and where we could go, people are accepting less safe options to have the opportunity to travel in these ways. So when we give attention and accommodation for these modes, I think will greatly expand and enhance the accessibility on this critical corridor. To build our recommendations, we synthesized both our findings, the data, and other report data available to identify 3 focus areas: the commercial area, that stretch we just looked at, the collector component with 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, and then a few hot spots along the corridor, which were key conflict or hold your breath spots. I'm going to zoom through for time some of the recommendations. I encourage you to, if you can, read as much as you can on the slides, but like we said, they are categorized into policy, education, infrastructure, and operations. Policy, this is building better awareness of the traffic laws and from the ground up accepting both complete streets policies and Vision Zero principles that will formalize the county or the municipality's commitment to planning for all modes. This includes considering ways to advance all mode decision-making by ordinances or overlays that may support more integrated walking and biking into development rules or signage or what have you. Education is a core component, like we said, of Vision Zero. We want to demonstrate that traffic safety is important to the community and that we're committed to improving it. The images at right show some ways that communities have mentioned why they believe or why they are dedicated to a Vision Zero mindset and what they'll do as a pledge. Often this can be supported by an established community Vision Zero committee that might develop a specific plan with strategy and objectives, or by partnering with schools or other folks that could really incentivize or encourage walking and biking from their students, their employees, or just visitors and shoppers. You may recognize this image and some of the folks in it. This is an example of an organized bike tour, which is one of the best ways to build familiarity and comfort with cycling in a corridor. As far as infrastructure improvements, these are a few highlights more generally of just looking towards connections, looking towards improving the visibility of the existing infrastructure with new, painted crosswalks or connections there, and looking towards access management to reduce these curb cuts or better organize traffic flow in and out of these many commercial properties on the corridor. Additionally, recognizing that there is interest in both on-demand and fixed transit service, we want to make sure that it is highly visible and comfortable for riders with new lighting or with more human scale lighting to both improve visibility, but give it a more welcoming environment. In the longer term, if we look towards more dedicated facilities for walking and biking, these may look something like a more defined shoulder for walking or for biking, which an advisory shoulder is an FHWA. It's kind of a pilot project at this point, so you'd have to get specific clearance, but it dedicates a specific space for walking and biking without being an official buffered or striped bike lane. If we look towards off-road options that may be more comfortable for walking as well, we can look towards a multi-use path, capturing some of the business access points there, or a contraflow cycle path, which would be on one side of the road, but give bi-directional flow for folks walking and biking. Lastly, operations ties again to policy. Integrating those Vision Zero principles is so paramount to making sure that these movements and these approaches are accepted. Things like changing our phrasing from accident to say crash, or being sure we're having a big tent approach to engaging the community in these decisions is great. Looking towards how we adopt some of those inclusions of walking and biking like PennDOT Connects is really important. I've highlighted a few resources that have been helpful in showing how that can be done. And lastly, just ongoing maintenance to see if there are interim improvements that we can make to improve walkable and bikeable Hogan Boulevard. Things like clearing out that vegetation where possible, or actually delineating those footpaths, those towpaths that people are walking on today. Are there low cost, low hanging fruit there that we can address in the near term to make it feel safer without any dedicated or intensive improvements at this stage? So there is the spark notes of this study. What's next? Returning to our initial question, how can we make Hogan Boulevard safer, more comfortable, and enjoyable for walking, biking, and rolling? This study hopes to give a better understanding of the context, the needs, the constraints, and the opportunities of the corridor. If we look towards advancing our recommendations, we'll need more engineering, engagement, and environmental analysis to see what's feasible. But we can start looking for funding, project delivery options, or interim improvements to see these recommendations realized. And most importantly, I encourage the team and the community to start today. Education, engagement, and policy improvements are, I guess, what's the term for shovel ready, right? We can work on developing an educational campaign or an action plan to spread awareness. We can start building those coalitions or groups for a Vision Zero committee. And we can work towards, again, addressing and advancing those short-term improvements, integrating these ideas into our work. So again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the chance to share this with you and to have this discussion. Welcome any questions or comments, and I will return the screen to y'all. Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for running through the study process and some of the innovative things you had done. We appreciate what you brought to bear on this, kind of the eye tracking technology, or some more creative public involvement. And appreciate you and Michelle and all the dedication you showed to really becoming familiar with the project corridor and giving us some great recommendations to pursue. So do we have questions, comments for either Carrie or Michelle?
I just want to say thank you so much for doing this study, and thanks to SEDA COG for, putting it on your priority list, get it funded. It's really important in our county. Everybody goes there, everybody uses it every day. And it's just a zoo, and whatever we can do to make it safer and more rational for people. And we realize it'll take a big commitment on our end to follow through with the recommendations. I'm thinking maybe we should get those major employers, those big box stores, and commit to participation in this committee and have the people who are there lead the charge. The township officials are very indifferent. They see it as, their big tax base, but they don't really see it as their job to make it better. So I think it's got to be residents and employers.
Thank you. And I know Mark Schultz, I know there's some things that are planned along the corridor as well. And maybe as there's means to incorporate some of these recommendations into either bridge projects or resurfacing in the future, this really lines us up with a lot of analysis and recommendations that we can take a closer look at as part of the normal project development cycle for resurfacings and bridge projects as well. So Any comment, Mark, that you wanted to make on that as well?
No, I agree, Steve. This is a great document to have in hand. And as Katie mentioned, I applaud SEDA COG for stepping forward and working towards this. This was an interest that came out of a PennDOT Connects meeting on a project. And the follow through is tremendous for all that have been involved in this. The follow through to make this happen. We now have a document in hand that can lead to those improvements in that corridor, that can lead towards that type of interest and need within the future projects. And this is the first step. It's been completed, and I look forward to seeing that come to fruition.
This is Stover. Curious, good presentation, very interesting. Question for you and or Mark. The two bridges there connecting Flemington and Bald Eagle Township, one over the canal and one over Bald Eagle Creek. What is the time frame for, that's really the most dangerous pinch point. I live in Lock Haven, so I know the area very well. But what on the tip, or what's the longevity when a new bridge, because that's the only way to really fix that really bad pinch point, is new bridges that would accommodate pedestrian and a bike lane or whatever. Where does that stand relatively to time frame? How many years? I think the Truss Bridge over Bald Eagle Creek was repainted about 10 years ago or so. So it may be quite a while, but any updates on that, or what the vision as far as time frame might be, where that could be possibly improved?
Yes, Jeff, this is Mark. The Truss Bridge is the PennDOT Connects meeting that brought this interest to light. The Truss Bridge is currently part of a bridge preservation project at this time. There will be some upgrades and updates, rehabilitation to that Truss Bridge, I believe starting in 2023. But it's the conversation now that leads into where the needs are. The bridge that goes over the canal, what can be done in that area? Is there anything that can be done for widening? Is there anything that can be done with the sidewalk through that area? Those are the conversations to be had, and look forward to working towards with this group and the community on those types of improvements.
Thank you.
Steve, can I chime in
Sure,
just
please.
a moment? So I wanted to connect the dots a little bit between a conversation that Mark Colosi and I had last week with regard to the Mifflin County Active Transportation Plan that we're working on, and some of Carrie's closing comments about like, what can you do today? Certainly infrastructure takes years to get in place because of the planning, the design, construction just does take significant amount of time. But part of the what can we do now is the education side of things. Yeah. And she called out sort of that driving culture. People expect everybody to be in a big vehicle, not look out for folks who either choose to or don't have the means to have a vehicle, and therefore are walking and biking or rolling. Mark and I had a briefing to the commissioners last week on the Mifflin County Active Transportation Plan, sat down after that. And during that conversation, Mark, you can kick me later, I felt like Mark was asking my permission. Could I write an editorial to the newspaper about sort of the importance of recognizing this need, that people do walk and bike, and we do need to look out for them and think about them in our driving behavior when we are behind the wheel. And I'm like, well, Mark, you don't need my permission. Of course, you could do that. But that's needed, I think, in many places in the SEDA COG region. And I mentioned the study up at Verhoeven Boulevard as well. I'm like, I said, Mark, if you want to draft that article and share it with your peer planners, maybe you could get it placed in a series of newspapers. So the effort into the writing initially is on one person's shoulder, and everybody else tailors it to your town. Sure. Maybe you have your own local example of what you'd want to call out. But that might be a way to share that. Mark takes one, Katie takes another, month or week, or however you choose to bucket a series of a couple of articles and try and raise awareness. And Catherine could be the point person, we'll draw you into this too. But that was just, I thought, an interesting connect the dots between a study we were completing and one that we're still working on, addressing that cultural aspect, which isn't necessarily a high cost item and can be a do it today, do it this year sort of initiative.
Will you be presenting this plan in Clinton County? Was there any plan for that? I know your work period is over.
Yeah,
Is that possible, or could, I can do it? But I'd like to gather those Bald Township officials and some of those big employers.
Mhm.
And besides the county commissioners, because we're only peripherally involved in this, and make a presentation and get their attention somehow.
Mhm. Happy to support you if we can arrange that. If it works
Okay.
for both of us, sure. We can give you this PowerPoint.
Yeah,
If you
that'd
feel
be
it needs
good.
any adjustment for that particular audience,
Okay.
you're welcome to do that as well. We'll see that you and Steve both get that.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
have the recording of this, if
Yeah.
that supports anything, and if maybe under the larger PennDOT Connect technical assistance, if that kind of thing could be a
Oh,
follow
yeah.
through there as well.
If you do it technical
Technical
assistance. Yeah,
assistance
just to,
wise,
some
okay.
additional, just to cover, the travel time presentation. We documented who attended, and if there's follow-ups, help you create that record. That'd be an
Okay,
excellent thought. Thanks, Steve.
Would a project of this type be a multimodal candidate?
Well, if project elements were nailed down and
Down
put together.
PennDOT
sure.
roadway,
Mhm.
interconnectivity to rec and community. You're talking a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, and you're having pedestrians with bicycles and carts.
And it's PennDOT bicycle
whatever.
route G also happens to be.
Yeah, I think the important element would be that local support.
Yeah.
And Katie can't be the one dragging the whole thing, and that won't succeed easily.
No, we've got a couple issues, John and I have been talking about with connectivity from the community to a recreation facility.
Mhm.
And just hearing some of the things that were brought up here, safety being a primary concern. Another avenue for us to approach.
Sure, again, PennDOT connects technical assistance. If you want fresh
Yeah,
eyes or
that's a
thoughts
good
on it, you
idea.
could
Yeah.
have somebody come out for a couple hours, have some conversation, give you some direction. If there's serious interest, then you apply for funding and do a little study like we did here in Clinton County.
And the beauty, at least, if it is something that leads to a more in-depth study like this, the PennDOT Connect funding can be 100%. There won't be a match requirement. So, but yeah, that kind of other technical assistance, outside objective eyes to come in, we always support that. And there's still capacity with the consultant teams and through PennDOT's contract for PennDOT Connect to support that kind of analysis. So, gives you a standing for applications, and it's interactive and collaborative. So, recommend that. I think there were some comments in the chat, just people were very impressed by the presentation and found this as valuable, I believe. So thanks for all you joining virtually. Were there any other comments from anyone virtual and not in the room that you had on the Hogan Boulevard study?
The text covered for me as far as that was literally flat out the best presentation I've ever seen on active transportation and a study of a specific area. I can't give you any more kudos than that.
Great, thank you, Frank. Gary, make sure you put that somewhere. Note that.
It's been recorded.
Myself to print it and then frame it on my wall, just that little chat. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for it's great to hear the interest in moving this forward in new ways. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you all so much for that. If there's not further questions, what we would do is how we've been doing recently, look for a motion to accept the findings of the Hogan Boulevard Bike Ped study and to include the recommendations in the MTO's planning and programming process. So if there's a motion
I
to
make the
that.
motion.
Motion by Katie, thank you. We have a second?
Yes.
Second by Greg Mueller, thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, hearing none, that moves forward, and we'll look forward to sharing the final report with the group. We can put that in additional resources on our website as well. And maybe coordinating through Katie and Michelle on the local presentation and getting that done as well for the local officials and major employers. So
Yeah.
great early feedback and results. Thank you, everyone. Next, we'll kind of continue. We are a multimodal planning organization and body. We're going to keep the active transportation and alternative users focus going on agenda item I. And that's a trail counting initiative that we reported on previously. We were looking to acquire some bicycle pedestrian counters, and we had done through our work program that purchase, and we have those TrafX models, the units that were received. And so we have a little fact sheet on page 51 for you about what this is about, what's driving it, what we're looking to accomplish. And we have indicated on there that we partnered with Michelle Byler, associate professor at Bucknell University, and she has a lot of experience using these particular units on the Buffalo Valley Rail Trail and other locations. So we're pleased to have her engaged and interested. And so we reached out to trail managers at 3 locations here locally, just to facilitate that it'd be easy to access, get out, install them, check on the equipment regularly, do the data downloads, and maybe do some manual count validation if needed. So those approvals all came in from DCNR for the Milton State Park North and South Trails, Watsontown Borough for the Watsontown Towpath Trail, and the Merrill Lynn Conservancy for the Dales Ridge Trail. So there's 2 counters on each of those trails are out. We're starting to collect the data, usage there, and the kind of the intent is for it to be year long, that we can have that period of time and work with Michelle on the downloads and what the data is showing. And then there's an online platform that will allow us to see charts to be quickly generated of the usage, and it should be pretty accurate, as you see in the description there, particularly if people are doing more kind of single file and not a lot of side by side. There's not a lot of high volumes, at one point, but they are estimates. They're not true actual numbers, and validations can be done manually as well. So that's kind of our initial foray into this. We consulted with this group. We consulted with the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership, and also with the Active Transportation Committee, as we've identified these candidate locations and talked about the process. So that fact sheet is there for your review or perusal. And then the next page 52 just shows those first 3 sites. The counters that are deployed, and then just what we are tentatively throwing out as potential locations for future years. The next one maybe to go to the Clinton, Mifflin, Juniata County region to get the counters deployed and get some usage data coming in. And then following year for Columbia and Montour County. So we want to just put that out there as fodder, group discussion, particular locations you think would be good to place the devices. We can work with you on that. And Michelle, I think will be continuing to be interested. Michelle Byler is, sorry, and getting these for research purposes for her as well, for publications and analysis. So we see it as a real win-win for everyone. But if there's comments on that, where we should be looking at different locations or particular sites to install them, they'll be usually mounted on a post already along these trails or a tree that's suitable and inside of a lockbox, so it's secure and avoid some vandalism issues hopefully, and keep the insects out of them for the most part with some screening in there. So it's a mesh. That's kind of what's occurring, and we wanted to put it out for any other discussion or comments here today.
If someone rides their bike by the counter and then they come back and ride by it again on the way home, is it counted as 2 users?
They'll be counted, twice, but I think there's some adjustment factors.
Is there?
I'm not sure of all the actual, of how Michelle does that process and the validation, but we tried to put them at good sites, like at the entries a lot of times, kind of the trailhead, and then another site further along. Some of these, the Watsontown Towpath, I think, is probably the shortest trail, but the others are a little bit longer, so you'll have people that'll be traversing a longer stretch.
She had mentioned they do in-person counts at the end, and then there's some adjustment statistics at the very end that they can apply and account for the double counting.
Double counting, yeah.
Has the monitoring started already?
Yes, she installed it in August, or sorry, in late July. And so they're up and running. And then you have to actually go out to the device to get the unit to download it. So then there'll be an online site where we can see the results and the charts and share those back with the committee members, share them with the trail manager. So they're actually out there now starting to collect.
Cool.
So through probably August of next year, and then we'll look to deploy them elsewhere. Any other questions on that initiative?
I certainly have a question, just the comment that I appreciate you coordinating this project. I think it's a good opportunity for us to get some quality data, so thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, we're glad to do so and start building that. It's kind of a gap, and you see it in more of the urban MPOs. They have kind of larger programs with this, and various types of settings that they use them, but hasn't been done widely within this region. So yeah, we see it as valuable. Thank you. So feel free to share any additional comments or input on that process, and you can bring it to this group or those of you that are on the Active Transportation Committee through that as well. And that'll be our next report. Catherine's going to give us an update on everything that's been cooking with the Active Transportation Committee.
Before I hop into that, I do have one person that's labeled as guest on here, and I just wanted to ask if you could let me know what your name is for attendance purposes.
This is Jack Kittle, Borough
Okay.
Berwick.
Hello.
Thanks, Jack.
All right. For the Active Transportation Committee, nothing printed in your packet today, just a quick verbal update. We have a safety work group meeting coming up early next week, and then a full committee meeting, I believe it's the week after that on Wednesday. So hopefully some good things will be coming out of that we'll be able to share at the October meeting. I'm not sure when the other two work groups are going to be meeting. Corey has been postponing those recently, so I will check with her on the status of those as well. I think that is all I really have to share about the Active Transportation Committee. So.
Is the full meeting going to be here?
We're actually going to do a fully virtual one this time. I mistakenly thought we could have a room, but it's the SEDA COG board meeting day, so we are going to do fully virtual.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks to all you that have engaged in that committee, and there's always opportunity for new folks to join the conversation in that forum. So if you have new staff people or new heavily involved volunteers on the bike ped side of things, feel free to connect them to the group. It's nice that we have kind of a eclectic group there from academia, health systems, planning, local advocacy groups and such. So thank you, Catherine, for the update on the committee, and we'll share more after the next full meeting. Next is kind of our typical member forum. Not much really within your package, just a few interest items, and some of those overlap a little bit with the staff report on some of the funding programs and such. But mentioned the Stop Hopper microtransit service we've been discussing from Rapid Transit. We did coordinate a presentation from Rapid Transit and their mobility manager at a recent Greater Susquehanna Valley Chamber Committee meeting, talking about the great usage they've seen, particularly in the Shamokin Dam, Sunbury, and Northumberland Borough corridor that's been deployed for that microtransit service. So probably maybe the end of the year, if it makes sense, our final meeting or early next year, we can probably coordinate with Rapid Transit and have them do the presentation to the MPO as well, what they're seeing today, maybe future expansions or new things that they're working on, with their microtransit service, or potential other expansions into other zones. So if that's of interest to the group, we can try and coordinate that for our November meeting or else the early 2023 meeting. That's really the main update I had from the forum. And just I was going to mention that something with the TIP administrative modifications and amendments, we received other MPOs planning materials and for their board meetings, and the Harrisburg area recently developed like a web map to show all those project adjustments, so you can click on the point and bring up some more detail. So it's not just the table or the narrative that you see in our packets. So that's probably a feature enhancement we're looking at, and Captain's willing to take that on, so we're glad for that. It might help y'all as we send out the meeting materials, maybe have that web map link, and you can go in and click on those project sites or see what's involved in the adjustments visually as well. So we'll look to kind of follow that model and best practice from one of our peers down in the Harrisburg area. So are there any other member forum, good of the order type items that anyone wants to share today? Okay, thank you. Our chat traffic has been populated, it seems, so looks like probably Frank and Gina have sharing a number of good of the order and grant applications and programs and notices of funding opportunity and webinars there. So if those are of interest to any of y'all that are online, feel free to check those out and click on those links. Any other questions, comments on those? Anyone from the virtual participants?
Nope, excellent meeting as usual, guys.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else in the room or any pressing matters you want to discuss before we would close? And those of you sticking for 11:30 can get a little breaks before that, and your lunch is part of the county plan directors meeting. The final call for any interest items. Okay, there are none. We'll look to get a motion to adjourn the meeting and reconvene on October 7th.
So move, Frank Hampton.
Thank you, Frank. Is there a second?
Sure.
Greg Mulder, thank you for the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we're adjourned, and enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend with some cooler temps.
Have a good day. Be safe, guys.